The interesting thing though about this, and I think which is a really key feature, is the valve check is something like 24,000 miles, which is huge. You know, that's class leading as far as I can tell. Right, hello everybody. Hope you're well today. So we've got another bike review this morning. It's still morning. I've had to get up early. Well, it's not early, it's 10 o'clock. So what am I riding? Well, I'm back on an adventure bike, and another bike that piqued my interest. So Billy's Motorcycles at Pulborough. You know, I do quite a bit of stuff with them. Great guys. And they are now a Zontes dealer, so we're back on Chinese bikes again. But you might have already come to understand that where Chinese bikes are concerned, I'm only really interested in looking at something if it's got something different, if it's got something new to offer. It's not a direct clone of something or just a copy, but it's got something unique which I really like. And there's some interesting features on this bike, but the key thing that piqued my interest is the triple engine. So I thought, oh yeah, I've got to go and have a look at that and see what that's all about. And looking at some of the stuff online about this bike, it's got some really interesting little bits about it, which just makes your life a little bit easier. There's some stuff I'm sort of slightly confused about, because there's a lot going on this bike, but we'll talk about those. So let's go and have a quick look around the bike like we normally do. Just have a look at some of the features on it, and then we'll do some riding, because it's all about the riding really on this bike. But let's go do that, and we'll have a chat about the bike, have a look around it, because this is still a pretty new bike really into the UK. And as Zontes, as we know, we're really sort of in the small capacity bikes, you know, the 50s or the 125s. So let's go and have a look at the bike. Come on. Right, here we are then. The Zontes 703 Adventure. It's a big bike, isn't it? It looks like a big bike when you look at it compared to me. But we're obviously on the centre stand. But interesting, when you actually get on the bike, it's not that big. It's not that high. And I find I can actually reach the ground really easy, and I'll show you that in a sec. But it's an impressive piece of kit. But I think the thing is with some of these bikes is that there's a lot of styling on these bikes which is reminiscent of other manufacturers. You know, there's a little bit of there's quite a lot of Tenere in here, I think, with that front angle there, and then the front itself has that with the lights you got on here. There's interesting headlights, very similar to the new Tracer from Yamaha. So you get this strange amalgamation, don't you, of that the Chinese are taking different bikes and then putting them into one, so it all looks rather sort of familiar to us all. Right, so let's have a look at some of those key features then, which you see on a lot of other these sort of Chinese bikes, but some of the things that I like and are not too keen on. Yeah, let's have a scout around the bike and have a look at those next. So the stuff that everybody wants. So we got tubeless rims on here. That's your tyre monitoring there. So you've got tubeless rims. The Anarchy tyres, which I like. I like the Anarchies. I think they're really good. Quite a cool exhaust system. And I'll give you the sound of that in a minute. But it does sound really good. It does sound like a triple should, which is important. You've obviously got the back part here, so you can either put a jivvy box on there, or it also comes as a kit with the rear box and the side panniers. Hand guards. We've got hand guards. We've got twin discs on the front. The headlights, which I've already pointed out. Obviously, it is a water-cooled bike, so we've got a fairly whopping radiator in there, and it's a nice curved rad as well, which is good. And you've got an oil cooler at the bottom, which is nice. Decent metal sump guard and side as well, so it goes front and side. We've got lights on the handguards as well, which is a nice feature. A really lovely dash, but I'll come back onto that in a sec. Adjustable front forks for damping and preload, which is really good. And we've got an adjustable rear shock there. Marzocchi these are on here, which is really nice. This is quite cool. We've got a little sort of tool pack there, which stays on now, I believe, when you put the panniers on. So that's a nice extra bit of storage, that. And it's just a little thing that a lot of people don't do. We've got the quick shifter, we've got the centre stand. One thing I do like about this is that the side stand is actually really easy to find. It's really easy to get to. And I know they're little things, but it's one of those things that you need when you've got let's turn you around. When you've got a fairly big bike, you know, and you come to a stop, you want to be able to get to the side stand quickly, and this one you can. It's the easiest side stand I've found on any bike. Well done, Zontes, for that one. Mirrors are good. Had no issue with the mirrors. Of course, you've got this adjustable screen as well. So that's your sort of press to wake everything up. And obviously you've got your start button there, start and stop button. So there's your dash. Hopefully you can see that in the sun, which is rather nice. So you've got all your, all you can probably see is my face. Your bits and pieces down here, tyre pressure monitors, the volts. You've got a big rev counter there, and you've got the speedo in the middle. Engine temp and petrol this side. But what this bike does do, which I think is another quite an interesting feature, is that you get this for the running in period. Like I said, it will run in anything below 7,000 rev, that's the peak, and it will switch that off once you get to the correct running mileage. How cool is that? What a simple thing, but it works, and it's a nice feature on a bike like this. Let's look at the. Now this would be probably one of my criticisms. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on here. So there's your indicator, hooter. You've got heated seat, traction control you can turn on and off, which is great. You've got the screen up and down and all that sort of stuff. That's the one button I just switch on and off. It's so close to the indicator that it's easy to hit that without realising it. Because when you think on this side, all I've got is the heated grips. So you think you might just spread a bit out. Or even put a bit in here, I don't know, just change that a little bit. Just to make that less cluttered. And then we've got dip and stuff up on here, which is okay. That's another thing I've had on. So I've had the high beam on when I didn't realise I should have had. And you've got a little flasher there. So yeah, watch that. The levers are quite small. I will say that the levers are quite small. But I do get plenty of feel, so it's not much an issue with that in that respect. So the actual general layout of the bike is actually really nice. I always think bikes need to look good from behind as well as the front, and that's got quite a wide profile, isn't it? A lot going on there, but it's pretty well thought out, you know. But then I suppose if you are copying other manufacturers, you know, you're getting the style right straight off. The easy bit's the style, isn't it? Because you're just copying other bikes which are of that type. But this is quite a deep air, isn't it? I think this is a 20-litre tank on this, so it's going to have a good range. And then you've got these side lights, or riding lights if you like, on here, which is nice. I think overall, generally, I think the bike actually is a really nice looking bike. I just wish they'd do some other colours though. Okay, let's go for a ride, and we'll have a chat more about the features on the bike. We'll see what it rides like anyway, come on. So, So the ride, what were my initial impressions? Well, as soon as I sat on the bike, it had, and funny enough, Billy's, my old Africa Twin was in there, and it reminded me instantly the actual seat position when you sit on it, and where the dash is and all the rest of it is very similar to my Africa Twin. And I think that brings me on back to that point about, you know, there's so many things on this bike which are sort of copies of other bikes, really, and they've sort of amalgamated them all into one. But that's something I'm going to do another video about. But the actual initial impression is that it's actually it's very familiar. It doesn't feel like those other bikes, Chinese bikes that I've ridden, which were a little bit, didn't have a lot of soul to them. There was nothing engaging about them. They were competent bikes, but they weren't very engaging. With this one, I feel it is. There's more to it. There's more to this bike than the others that I rode. You know, we're coming into this age, aren't we, where the Chinese have got they've got the quality right, but now they're getting the feel. Now they're looking at the feel of the bikes, and I think that's quite interesting. In terms of its actual turn and, you know, sort of general handling, even at slow speed, it's actually really nice. The one thing that a lot of the Chinese bikes suffered from, and those bikes I tested in France had that, was the throttle response at low speeds. This doesn't have that. This is actually really, really calm. There's no jerkiness, there's no hesitancy, anything like that. The throttle's not on or off. It's as good as anything I've ever felt. It really is. It's actually really pleasant to ride in that respect. The brakes as well, the front brake has got tons of feel on it. It's nice and progressive, and the engine just feels like a triple should, ultra smooth. The one thing I will say, and I'm always very conscious of this on bikes that might be used for touring, is what are they going to be like a cruise? What's the revs like, you know, once you're in top? Because don't forget, this has got 6 gears, and being 700cc, you think, well, it's got to cruise better than my CV500 that I had. Yes, it's got way more power than that. You know, it's more than double the power. We're talking over 90 horsepower, which from a 700 is actually pretty darn good. You know, it outclasses the Tenere in that respect. But you're cruising 6. Now I'm in 6 at the moment, doing 50 miles an hour. I'm doing just about 3,800 revs. What we'll do, we'll get it up to 60, and we'll see what the revs are. So it's quite high geared. Lovely turn. It's got a lovely turn in. Yeah, I mean the gears are pretty close. So I'm doing 57 at just over 4,000 revs. 60 miles an hour is, yeah, about 5.2. 4.2, sorry. So it's quite high revving, and again you get that issue for me with when you're on the cruise. I mean, I know the bike is not nowhere near running, and I'll discuss that again in a minute, but I always think if you've got a 6th gear, that needs to operate like an overdrive when you're touring, that you want it to have a really lazy top gear, because the only time you're going to use it is when you're on the motorway, and you want that gearing to be really relaxed. So you're doing about, you know, if you're doing 75 and it's doing about 4,000 revs, that's fine. You know, similar to the NC750 and that sort of thing. That's why those bikes are such a great touring option, because they give you such a nice low gear. When you're just cruising on the motorway, it's not fatiguing. But you get that sort of, you feel like you're not working the engine hard, but you feel like you need another gear, because that 6th gear is so close. It's very similar to the street triple that Karen had. The gearing was so close in the top band, you know, in your sort of 4th, 5th and 6th, that you didn't really realise you were changing gear half the time because they were so close. but you know, that's personal to me. That I like a long gear in my six. This is more like a bit of a pocket rocket, really. See, I keep thinking I want to change gear. I want to get into another gear. Seat-wise, the seat's hard. I'm going to say for me, but I'm a big lad. At least this ain't rude there, you know. And for me, the seat is quite hard. I'd probably have to put my dog bed on to be comfortable. But the actual layout and feel of the bike, you know, what I'm looking at here is actually really nice. It's not too cluttered. I know the instruments. We've discussed the instruments on the grips. You know, there's a lot of buttons here to use. The indicator switch is sort of slightly hidden a little bit, but they chose to put everything onto the grip. You know, that's their choice, I suppose. But apart from that, the actual screen itself is really uncluttered. It's actually really quite attractive. They're doing their screen so well. Now, I know I looked at some of those, like the Reju and those Q-Gym bikes. They're just like, keep wanting to change up. They have these lovely white on black, or black on white dashes. It's stunning, and this one's just as nice. I dare say this has got several settings for the dash. It does turn it really nicely. It's got a nice turn on this bike. As I said in the walk around, the interesting thing about this bike with the running period, and I don't know why other companies don't do this, the ability to do that is so simple, isn't it? You know, it's just programmed into the bike that you can't exceed 7,000 on this bike during the running period, and it's sort of like set, and then once you've gone over a certain mileage, your running period mileage, it will trigger that off, so you're then ready to go. What a simple thing with modern technology these days, that we have the ability to do that, and nobody else does it. I can't fathom that one. But what a great addition to a bike like this, that it lets you, it makes you do the running period. And as I've noted on my Classic 350, running your bike in properly will benefit the engine enormously. You know, as you get on with it, makes a big difference running the bike properly. It really does. You're essentially conditioning your engine, and it works really well. Suspension wise, yeah, it's just riding over the bumps, no problem at all. These are not great roads around here. It's incredibly compliant. You know, it's really, really nice. One of the questions always is the bike heavy? It's about 220 wet, or about 230 wet. So it's not as bad as a lot. I think it's in the ballpark where these sort of bikes are. I don't think you're going to get a bike as big as this, much lighter than that. But I will say that it was easy to get onto the centre stand, which is quite important. Okay, I've not got panniers or anything on here, and there's very little fuel in this bike. But it was easy to get onto the centre stand. Let's have a look and show you what it's like to actually sit on there. Let's get it off the centre stand. Cool. Ooh. I mean, that's nice. I mean, let's put that side stand up. I'm easily flat-footed. I'm about a 30-inch inside leg, about 5'11", 5'10", 5'10 and a half. I get shorter as I get older, but that's not difficult to handle at all, and it carries its weight quite well. It's much better than my Africa Twin. That's not top heavy. Even though the bike looks like it's quite tall, it doesn't feel it. It carries its weight much better than those Q-Gym bikes that I rode back in France, particularly the 700. This is a much nicer animal than that 700. That felt like a dead weight. This feels like a more sort of sorted bike. They've worked out where to put the weight on this bike, and it's not at the top. It's actually really nice, to be honest with you. and an easy side stand. So that engine then, so what is it really like? Well, you know, it is really actually really nice. It sounds great. The burble, it sounds really good. We're just going to open it a little bit here. I'm going to go 2 back revs. Yeah, nice. I mean, it's a lovely engine. It is a lovely engine. But I will say you can feel that slight harshness through the transmission. You know, and I think you've got to be honest about these things. But I think that's, you know, initial harshness possibly. God, it does, you know, it does turn lovely. You know, the handling is really nice. One thing I have noticed as I've been trundling around though is these buttons. I did manage to put the hazards on. The buttons are quite cluttered, and it's easy to accidentally hit something. Because you've got so many things in it. You've got heated seat, heated grips. You've got a lot of things happening on the one button, and you've got to, you know, once you've had it for a few weeks, it becomes second nature, won't it? But I think they're the sort of machine gun approach to putting buttons on the grips, you know, can be slightly problematic. I think the saving grace of what's happening over these Chinese bikes is that we've, you know, I've got more service centres for Zontes in my area than I have for Royal Enfield, BMW, Honda, Kawasaki's, all those put together. You know, I've got 2 within 20 miles of my house. If not even that, it's not even 20 miles. You know, probably 15 miles. So, you know, my nearest Enfield dealer now is blimey, sort of 50 miles away, 50, 60 miles away, and that's the only one. Now I've got no other choice, and that's the issue, isn't it? And it's the same with BMW and Honda. They're all 30, 40 miles away, and there's only one. The next one, and again, is a huge distance from there. So I think the Chinese are doing this thing, you know, where they're getting the bikes out there and getting a better network of service centres, because if you haven't got that, you know, if you can't get it serviced or warranted, then you're a bit stuck, aren't you? So what are my final thoughts about on this bike then? Well, I certainly think that the overwhelming thing is the quality of the bike itself. You know, I have no issues with the actual fit and finish of this bike. I think it's excellent. I think it really is. And when you add that into the price, you know, with all the kit, it comes with all the boxes, panniers, and all the rest of it, engine guards. You know, you're looking at £8,000, which is extraordinary value. We were talking to a chap as I picked the bike up, and we sort of said, well, how much do you think the bike is? And he said sort of 10, 11,000. So, you know, pretty impressive. I think the amount of kit you get on the bike is amazing. You're not going to need to buy anything for it, are you? You know, it's ready to go. I think from a safety point of view, I think the brakes are excellent. I think the engine is lovely, and how nice to sort of be able to get a triple engine, a new triple engine for that price. I don't think it's as refined as the Triumph, and I don't think the drivetrain's as refined as the Triumph. But then, you know, it's only half the price of the Triumph, isn't it, at the end of the day? And I think it'll be very interesting. I will come back, which I do sometimes, come back and retry these bikes once they've had a good running in period, to see what they're like. But I think as a package you can buy for that amount of money, if you're not doing huge miles, you know, you just want an adventure style bike that's new, and then you can get it serviced and you're near a Zontes dealer. Well, fantastic, you know, fantastic. Yes, there is the issue with the short service intervals, but as I say, you know, Bill is saying to me, you know, they're going to work with you on that. You know, when they replace the plugs, they're going to put the better plugs in it and all this sort of stuff, you know. So I think you have to sort of look, well, how many miles do I generally do in a year? You know, 3,000 for the servicing, and I think it is 3,000 and interval servicing, and 6,000 for the rest. The interesting thing though about this, and I think which is a really key feature, is the valve check is something like 24,000 miles, which is huge. You know, that's class leading as far as I can tell. Strange squeaky noise, it wasn't me. You know, you don't get that on a lot of other bikes. So that sort of, you know, evens it up a little bit, doesn't it? But yeah, I think it's a good bike. It's a good package. There's a lot going for this bike. I think in particularly the looks. I think it looks fantastic. Shame they only do it in 2 colours. You know, you've got this sort of grey and blue and the black. People like the black. I'm not very love with the black, but you know, I like these sort of colours. This sort of grey is very now, isn't it? It's a very in colour. You know, it's like I say, your kitchen cabinets and everything are this colour at the moment. You know, Honda do this colour, don't they, for their GB350, like sort of stuff. So I think it's one worth looking at. I think it's different enough from all the other sort of Chinese bikes. Again, it's giving you that unique feature with the triple engine, which is great. So, you know, there's not a lot not to like, is there, really? It's just getting over that fear of Chinese bikes. But I think Chinese bikes are they're so here now, aren't they? That I think you pick your manufacturer that you think has got a good track record, and I think Zontes does. I think they've been in the market a long time, and they ventured into this bigger capacity area. And I think it's impressive. Right, I'll leave it there, and I will see you. I'm going to go and do some more 700 triple riding, and I'll see you in the next episode. Right, take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. Again, thanks to Billy's for lending me the bike. See you soon.